You're on though, Kent.
Okay, so we're back
Yes, sir.
here.
We couldn't hear him at all.
So we're back live, Scott. So
Hear him at all. Over here.
Everybody perfectly in broadcast.
Yeah, over here.
you could hear Carl.
Wow.
All we could hear was, and then it repeated it. It would repeat that. So we're live. Yeah, we've rebooted. So we've gone live again. We've rebooted. So hopefully Carl jumps in here in a second.
Hopefully that's better.
Oh, there's Mr. Carl.
Is that Carl? He sounds better.
Good.
Carl, how's it going?
And can we get it up on the monitor, please, Noah? All right, so there we go. Is it sound good?
So everybody thought it sounded great on the stream, but we couldn't hear in the studio. So we had to turn everything off and turn everything back on again.
So, all right, Carl lives in Southern California. Carl, you do a lot of bird photography and have blessed us with your photos, and we truly appreciate that. But you also photograph some interesting stuff. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got started in amateur astronomy, and go from there, and then we'll talk about birds a little bit.
Okay, well,
I'll come back if I did.
I can't
my
hear
name is
him.
Carl Bernhardt, and I'm a retired geologist in the state of California. And far as astronomy, I took astronomy, beginning astronomy, Harvard General Science in college, and after getting out of college and graduate school, I bought a telescope and got involved with the local astronomy club and do a lot of astronomy outreach and
Okay, so just got into it that way, like a lot of people did. And now you and I have had a couple of email exchanges about some geology jokes as well.
Yeah.
So that was sort of fun. So the program today is.
I tell kids at outreaches that when they ask me what I do, I said, well, I'm kind of like an astronomer that looks downward instead of upward.
Exactly. You look both directions. So what sparked my interest and brought you on today, you sent me a picture of an International Space Station transit that you had captured a couple of days ago, last week now, I think. And I was like, dude, let's get you on the show to talk about how you do this, because you see people do it.
Weird because it worked earlier. We had everybody on earlier.
Okay, what's that?
Correctly, and it worked just fine. So
Okay, so something weird's happening now. Now the broadcast is re-looping. This is going to be crazy. I'm going to assume that it's just in here, Carl, and not anywhere else.
It's Scott. Go ahead. Scott is playing that in the background.
Okay, so there we go. All right, so
It's Scott.
Scott was playing the rebroadcast in the background that was coming through his microphone and picking us up. So anyway, all right.
I was like, what the heck is going on?
Okay, so
It's Scott. So I've turned Scott off.
thank you for turning Scott's microphone off. This is chaos that we're going to laugh about at some point in the future. All right, so is my screen up so they can see it now, Paul? So we can start the PowerPoint? Okay, yep. So thank you, everybody, for bearing with us. I can't see how many people are here, so I can't see your comments and chats. Scott's going to be handling that function, and there's Scott back with us again. So, Paul, can we get up the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. So the PowerPoint's going to come up here, and we're going to give you a picture of the sun is going to show up. There we go.
Oh, yeah. Go ahead.
And he's going to get it up in the box. Capturing ISS transit. International Space Station is what ISS stands for. And so weirdly, you're seeing both screens, although it's just showing one screen on mine. Chaos is running rampant. Please focus on the primary screen. All right. So this is, a picture we see a lot of. And, I thought, how do you do it? And I've never really explored it. So, Carl, talk us through how you start doing this and the way you execute this.
Okay, well, in this slide, we're looking at showing some apps for doing this type of work. The main one I use is the transit finder, and the it shows the location and the timing of transits of Hubble across the moon and the sun. And in last year, they added also transits for the Hubble and the
This
Chinese
is what I have on my screen.
communication.
Look,
There's other also apps for Apple and even for iPhone and Android.
I know, but I'm just wondering.
Locations
Yeah.
of ISS, but I've never found them that useful for actually doing this type of work. But they're there. Also, heavens above, you're going to have a visible pass. You can plot out the trajectory of ISS across against the night sky. So if you're trying to time it, a visual one where it's going to go across the sun or moon, across the moon at night, you can use that app. But it's
So-
not a visible app. It's not any use either. So the
Right,
primary
so-
one is the ISS transit finder. And then the next
Okay.
page should be a screenshot of that app, and you basically put shows you where you can put it input it either if you know the geographic coordinates for that launch, or you can
I know.
auto detect from your location, or you can scroll on a map. It defaults to 0, 0, so it defaults to the middle of the Atlantic Ocean in front of Africa. So well, you go back, keep back going back.
That's the very front.
One more. There we are. So it also gives the preferred travel distance, how far you want to willing to drive to chase the transit, and you push calculate and get to the next page. And so we had a transit close to my house on April 4th, and it gives the information as angular size of the space station, 2 seconds. Oops, he's lost my presentation.
Are you there?
Yeah, hang on.
I'm hearing a lot of echo on my end, so.
Is he hearing it through my mic?
No, it's on his end.
Okay, so just keep going. Okay, so Carl, what I'm looking at here is you've got a screen of transit-finder.com that shows you had a close transit coming up on March the 4th, and then Taigong over the moon. So how did you determine where to get to actually get the picture you took?
Well, again, I already had pushed the position in the map. You know, I calculate. In the previous page, I put the location I was interested, close to my house, and they gave within 80 kilometers of my house all the different potential transits that would occur, and then I moved the cursor over to the transit. To the actual transit center line and recalculate it, and that's where we have this one for the ISS transit on the 4th of April.
Okay, so how close do you have to be? I mean, how wide is that track?
I think if you read in there, it tells that there's like a 4.5. I can't read screen small, so I can.
Oh, 4 point. I see it. visibility path width 4.88 kilometers. So
Yeah, so basically you have a little over 2 kilometers either side of the center line, and
right.
before it falls off the face of the sun. So you
And,
have a very narrow path. It's not like an eclipse where you have a wide path where you can
right.
observe.
And it says the transit duration is 0.61 second. So
Yes.
six tenths of a second. It happens very quickly, and you got to be prepared for it, right?
Yeah. Unless
So-
you have a very fast finger.
I think that defies most human ability to who hit a trigger at exactly the right time to take one single picture. So
And the transit size all depends on how close the ISS is to us versus relative to the sun. So, if you have a smaller, if it's a farther away, smaller transit, you may have one or 2 second transit, but then you're going to have a smaller target across the sun as opposed to a larger footprint of the International Space Station, which would be faster.
So the way you do this is obviously with video. So you're shooting with a DSLR, right? I think we have a picture of that somewhere.
I usually
There we
use
go.
mirrorless. And so I have the thing on, I guess you want to go back, I think, where
Yeah, here I should be on right now. I'm showing the picture of your setup real quick.
yeah, this is my setup. I have a mirrorless Panasonic S1, which is full frame on a 1 to 500 millimeter, 150 to 600 millimeter lens and a 1.4 teleconverter. So I have equivalent 840 millimeter focal length, and then I have it on a geared Bogan head, which basically gives me an out as you slow at motion control, so I can be very precise in locating it. And using Beta film, there's several types of solar film you can use. The Beta gives kind of more a white, bluish white, as opposed to the black polymer, which I think was what the Explorer Scientific solar filters use, which gives more of a yellowish orange.
Yellow orange sort of look, right? Okay, so
But I
that's the
find
rig.
the Beta gets me a little faster because I also have those type of filters in glass, and I find that I get a quicker, about 1.5 stops more, exposure, brighter image using the Beta film than at least my glass. I don't have the yellow film. I just have the yellow glass. So I don't know if that correlates.
So you have two pieces of glass. You sandwiched your Beta film between.
No. I just have it taped across a piece of rigid foam and cardboard in front of it.
Okay, all right.
But I also have what I usually use for outreach is a glass filter because it's more protective. No, I have to worry about people punching holes in it.
Punching a hole through it or dropping something on it, right?
Yeah. So that's what I put on my ED when I'm doing outreaches with solar.
I think so.
I use a glass filter.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, Carl.
Yeah.
Are you watching? I'm sitting here. I think Scott's figured out the problem. Are you watching this on social media or on the link we sent you in the screen you see?
I'm on the link. I'm not on the social media. I'm on the
Okay.
link you sent me.
Okay. So you're not watching on Facebook or YouTube or anything?
No, I'm on.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So
It's hard to hear myself. I can hear my echo.
Yeah, we're hearing your echo. So then I can't hear. Okay, so let's go back to this slide right here. And so this shows the center line of the solar transit. We've talked about your rig a little bit. So here's the center line of your transit. So
Yeah.
you just picked your location and then went to that spot, right?
Well, I zoomed in on that. Unfortunately, they're not tied to Google, so I had to go back to Google Earth or Google Maps and look at, I usually look at several potential places where it crosses some type of cultural something where I can pull off the road and go. So before I get, a lot of times I haven't been, if I don't do ground truth ahead of time, so I'm relying on Google Earth and Maps and Street View to look at places where I can easily pull off the road and
Yeah, you scout your location. And how accurate is this? Can you do this a day ahead of time, a week ahead, or is this something?
It's always recalculating because the actual position of the ISS does drift from predictions, and so I get an idea from days ahead, but I always, the morning before I go off, I make sure that it is where it's supposed, where I expect it's supposed to be. So.
And so this is not an app. This is a website, right? Yeah, Transit-Finder.
Yeah, that's a website. You can go and find all the transits.
Right. Does it work on a smartphone, or is it just laptop based? It looks like you're on a tablet here from the screen.
Well, it is a website, so it should work on anything that can get on the internet.
But you're using a tablet here, it looks like, correct?
Well, that's what I usually look it up on my iPad.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
It's a bigger screen than trying to look it up on a phone.
Right. So you found your location. You drove to the spot. You were close enough to the center line. Your point, what does it say? Point. It said how far away you were. You're 0.71 kilometers away from the center line, and that was okay with you, correct?
Well, actually, I had already deleted that map after stuff. So this is one I created of that one, but it's actually the actual transit's a little bit to the left, but they're calculating now. When I did this one for the PowerPoint, it's based on the current location or yesterday's location of the ISS, back calculating to it. So it's not exactly to where I actually was,
right?
But it's close.
And because part of the trouble you face is that they make adjustments to the orbit fairly regularly to move out of way of things and to raise its orbit, if it starts getting a little bit too low. And so you end up with, it can shift a little bit, right? Because of those things.
A few days before, once I see something, maybe a week or two advance from the website, I will look at it, several days before I actually go out and see where it is going to be recalculated, and then before I head out the door that morning, I check it one more time to make sure it hasn't drifted.
Right. Okay. So you're at your location, and here we go. So the next shot we talked about your gear, and you're familiar with your camera really well. You use it for a lot of daytime photography. The question people have, well, what shutter speed should you use? And here we go. Let's talk about this page, the setting up the shot.
Yeah, I still see my map here. So.
Hang on just a second. I'm not sure what's going on. Huh?
I think it's back. I think it's before that. So
it's after the camera, setting up shot. Do you have the PowerPoint too?
Yeah, we're there.
Paul?
It's there now.
Okay, so they're not seeing my screen?
No, because your screen, nobody can read it.
Okay. All right, didn't know that. So setting up shot. Okay, here we go.
So basically, you always want to arrive early. It always takes you longer to set up, especially if you're going to be, going to use a tracker instead of doing it off a tripod. You want to obviously give yourself adequate time for setup. You might find out that you can't, for some reason, you can't use location. So it's always good to have several alternative locations from the transit. And so you're going to have to obviously give your time to move if it's necessary. As far as establishing proper exposure, you can do that in your own backyard days ahead of time. You know, if the moon's up or the sun's up, you can practice your setup and figure out what ahead of time what ISO and shutter speed you're going to be using. You know, so you have all your settings in your camera figured out in advance. And the rule of thumb I've seen on the internet is a minimum of 3 times your focal length shutter speed. That thing goes by fast. And then I set up on my cell phone. I set up alerts about 1 and 2 minute, so I don't, you know, because I easily get distracted and forget how the time quickly goes by. So it's always good to be notified, you know, ahead of time, real close. And again, we talked about we shoot video modes. One could do bursts, you know, but once your buffer gets filled, you know, you can't take any more shots, and maybe you miscalculated, and the space station's gone. So
Right.
It's best to shoot it as video instead of as trying to do a quick, you know, burst of shots. And then again, start video capture about 30, 40 seconds before transit time. Just give time to, you know, you're
Right, and that's why you're doing the video. You're okay. You just start the video and just let it happen. And
yeah.
how early do you arrive at the site? Your general rule of thumb: 15 minutes enough for you? You want to be there an hour ahead of time, or what?
Well, when I'm setting up not setting up a geomechanical mount, I can do it pretty quickly. When I set up this one, because I had a couple alternative locations, I ended up, you know, having extra time. So I was actually, once I set up my tripod and got it aligned, be close to the sun and all stuff, I was chasing butterflies and wildflowers for a bit because I had time to kill. But the one that was on the front page, I got out of the house too late and I only had about 20 minutes. So one I had about an hour, the other one I had about 20 minutes to set up. And the more time, the better, I guess, if you're not familiar where you're going for your location.
Yeah, obviously having more time is far better than having less time. And especially the first time you do it, you probably ought to be there way ahead of time just to get those jitters out of your way, you know. So
that, and you make sure you have a full make sure you have a full battery, that you have an empty SD card. One time I was going to do one across the sun, and I was going to try to do it with my ED80, with my Micro Four Thirds camera. And when I got there, but I brought also a telephoto lens just in case of the backup. And so I realized I forgot an adapter for the ED80, so I couldn't do that. So I said, okay, I have a 100, 400, but I didn't have a completely empty card, and that would have been fine if I did a couple test shots and test videos, and I would have been fine if I had deleted them before the ISS. But I just sort of nonchalantly just pushed the button, and about right before the transit occurred, the card filled up, and so I missed that one. That was one where one of the spaceships were docked into
yeah.
And it's like, well, I missed that one. So lesson learned is that take an empty card. Don't bring a partial field card. Make sure you're getting batteries. It's basic things that you think that are common sense, but things happen.
Yep, things happen, and that's why your best preparation. And Scott and I talk about all the time. If you're going to be taking a trip to a star party, you need to have a checklist of everything you need and pack it and check it off as you go. And now I'm hearing a very bad echo. Okay, so now the echoes come to me, Carl. So thanks a lot for giving me the echo. Okay, you've got you're live early. Your exposure can be done way ahead of time. What exposures are you generally using there, Carl? Do you know?
I think on that, the one that I had 250th of a second, I think around F10 or 11, and I think I had my ISO set up at 1600.
And as you said, you can do this the day ahead or the week ahead, because If you're doing it at approximately the same time, then your exposure is going to be the same. You're looking through the same air, the same altitude, so you can pre-plan a lot of this, and then when you get there, just do the exposure and go on down the road. Okay, let's go on to the next slide there, Paul. All right, so getting the image is the first piece of the puzzle. Processing the image, Carl, is what scares a lot of people. So we're going to process the image. Paul, which slide are you on?
Setting up shot.
Go to processing the image.
Okay, well, the next thing is now you have this 2-minute video and you have half a second of frames hidden in 2 minutes. And a lot of cameras, if you do a video, you can, like my Panasonic cameras, I can do it in-camera extraction, but sometimes I'll go through that video multiple times, and I think I missed it, and it doesn't get to it. You get home to I put it in my computer, and I can actually will see it. It goes by quickly, and the image is so small on your camera screen. But if I can find my images, I will extract them and save them as separate JPEGs on my SD card, and then but if you come home to your computer, there are software like PIP, which is I think it's a planetary imaging processing program or something. I'm not sure what it stands for, but that one you can extract you can't extract JPEGs, but you can extract TIFFs out of a video file, done for astronomical cameras, because if you extract all your images out, 2 minutes, 2,000 images on a stuff, it can take up quite a bit of space, but you can delete most of them. But once you have extracted, it's at least with a solar thing that's going on an awful lot of processing, except cleaning up dust spots and making a few adjustments. But if you're doing lunar, you're probably going to do a lot more post-processing, to maximize the quality of the image. You can do your standard things you do in Lightroom or Photoshop, as far as sharpening and exposure and all that stuff. But putting it all together, there's 2 things you can do. One is do a time lapse, where you can watch the transit go, in real time or slow down. And what I kind of use is Time Lapse Creator, which is a free basic software for Windows. It's not real fancy as far as for a lot of the time lapse software out there, but it's free and cheap and simple. And then the other thing is image stacking. You can use Photoshop. There's Star Stacks and Star Stack. All of them you can stack multiple frames with the ISS on there, looking like little, make it look like a bunch of ants going across the surface of the sun or moon.
How long, Carl? How long did it take you to learn the software? That's always scares a lot of people, I think. Is that well, taking the picture is one thing, but the processing is a whole different animal.
Well, if things like Star Stacks and Star Stack, it's a little more simple. If you're going to go through something like Photoshop, that's a little more involved. And I'm still learning. I mean, I mostly do Lightroom, and I'm still learning Photoshop. I don't use it enough to I have to go back to, pull up a video on Facebook somewhere to think about how I'm supposed to, do combine it, stacking images and all that stuff. Because I don't do it enough to remember.
So
a lot of online tutorials that you can use to do that. If you as far as how to stack the images of your ISS.
So I think the takeaway is don't be scared of it, right? The University of YouTube and the University of Facebook are both very good teachers if you take the time to do the work.
Well, people have done this, and people have posted how to do it, and so there's a lot of stuff out there to help you.
Yep. Okay, so let's go on, Paul, to the next process here, or the next frame, which is going to be the animation.
This is just a screenshot of the time-lapse creator software. Again, it's just for Windows. I don't know what's available for the people who have Apple systems. And basically, you load either as a folder or input your files, and then you decide if you want to do a 720 or all the way up to 4K quality, and you save it and push a button and watch it fly by. So it's very, and you can use the software for if you take pictures all night of the stars and want to watch the stars go by. It doesn't have all the sophistication of a lot of the time lapse, the commercial, that costs money. But if you're not trying to make a Ken Burns documentary, it's fine.
Ken Burns documentary. So you could do like a Milky Way moving across the sky shot, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Paul, next slide. He's doing something over there, mad at the keyboard, making adjustments.
So this one, and hopefully the video works, is at real time at 30 frames per second, because that's what I shot it at. Because in my camera, I can get the highest quality at 6K at 30 frames per second. If I want to do it faster, I'm going to have to shoot at a lower resolution. So it's one of these things that it goes by quickly. So
okay. So Paul, I can make it run on my computer by hitting the forward button again. What, Paul? Are you on my screen now?
Yeah.
Oh, we're on my screen now. Okay. Here we go. We're going to make it run again. There we go. Oh, no, that's slow motion frames. Okay, let's try and do this here. There we go. There we go. There we go. You see that right there? I know it's small if you're on a phone because we're back on my computer. The video won't run. Carl, do you even see it? I mean, do you try and look at it when you're watching it on the camera back, or do you never see it? It's so quick.
I never see it until I'm scrolling through all my 2,000 plus frames, trying to find it, and it goes by so quickly.
I just lost him. Oh, there you are.
Hello?
Okay. Yep. Can you hear me, Carl?
Yeah, I can hear you.
There. Okay. So, I mean, you just watch this. This is real time, 30 frames a second, and it just zips by. I mean, we know it's 0.6, of a second, so it's slightly more than half a second. 1,000. Yeah, it's boom. And why don't you just try and shoot 5 seconds either side of it? Why a minute on either side of it? Just belts and suspenders, I guess.
Well, when you push the button on your camera or your telephoto lens or your telescope, while you shake a little bit, and so you want to have things happen faster than you think, and so my 1 minute usually when my 1 minute notification from my cell phone goes on, I just push the button, and I run it for about 1 minute before and 1 minute after. I mean, it makes more frames than I'm gonna have to scroll through, but it just sort of guarantees that. Hello,
I'm still here. We've tried switching something, and now I'm trying to get my screen caught up to where the other screen is. There we go. So this is frustrating. All right, so there we go. We finally got it to where you're just seeing a large screen on the presentation. All right, so
Yeah.
let's go ahead and move forward to the next slide. And come on. And this is 10 frames a second. Here we go. So this is slowed down significantly. This computer. There it goes. And it just won't keep doing it. Frustrating, frustrating, frustrating. So here we go, one more time. It won't play the video for me again. So this is more pleasing, seeing it slower, but this is 1/3 the speed of real life, correct?
Yes.
So, all right, so it's not gonna play it again for me. So we have the composite image of the transit. So you took how many images here? This is
Probably about 17 or 18. I can't remember what the count is. We're not on that page anymore.
you got 19 images, it looks like, stacked up. Is what I just
Okay.
counted. Okay, are we back in? Okay, Paul, it's the screen, the monitor is nowhere close to what I have.
I can't help that, that's live streaming.
Okay, so, all right, so anyway, so we have a composite image of, looks like 19 images. And what did you use? The Sequator, what were they?
But that one I did it. Well, I tried several. The problem with solar as opposed to lunar are also if you did lunar or you did it on a Hydrogen Alpha, you would have a lot of detail, which alignment software can line everything all up, but there's not enough detail on a white, basically a white filtered sun to for those programs to work. I tried to start stack first and Photoshop to get it perfectly lined up and do the lineup, and that kind of went wonky because again there's not enough detail, and so I just used the simple one, which is start stacks with the X, and not lining it up. There's a little bit of stretching out of the sunspots. If you go back to one of the individual shots and compare them, so I guess for final image, which I haven't done yet, I'd make a mask of all the ISS, make a mask of one image, so I would have sharp sunspots and then a sharp transit, but I didn't have time to go play with that. I'm gonna have to.
So now, Carl, I have the slide up. Alignment issues. What are you?
Yeah, that's what we're talking about here. So
Yeah.
you can see how much the differences in the sunspots. So I didn't line this one, but I first tried to line it, and again there was not enough detail for the software to line anything up. So it was giving really wonky things, and so I just did non-align. Use software that's star stack with the X that doesn't line images. Now the alignment issue, if you're on a German equatorial mount, you probably won't have much alignment issues. But when you're doing it with even half a second, you can see the difference how much that sort of messes things up. As far as half a second movement.
Yeah, you don't think about the moon as moving that much or the sun moving that much, but in half a second it does move, and the sunspots are moving and everything else, and it's maddening to do it by hand in Photoshop, to get things lined up correctly. So
yeah, well, the simple thing is once you get your line of ants going across the sun, you just in Photoshop it just gets a little more sophistication, and is that you're gonna have to make a mask of just the ISS, and then make a mask of either one of your earlier shots where you don't have ISS or just are deleted off in post processing, uh, and and take those two images and combine them.
So in Photoshop, you would literally just use one image of the sun and then individual images, masked off images of each ISS and just put them on top of the picture
Well,
of the sun. Right?
you can create an image like, well, in the next one, which is the one lunar, I actually did alignment through Photoshop, and so I mean, there was a few digital artifacts that the stacking created, but on some of the craters, but it was again shot through through a telephoto lens, and the software aligned they stacked all the images of the ISS and also aligned up the moon shots. This one actually, the ISS is farther away, so it's probably about 1.5 second. And you can also tell there's a lot more. This is actually every other image, so there's a lot because it was a lot. It was farther. They were farther away, but it took longer to get across the surface
Right.
of the moon.
So how do you focus? That's a problem everybody has when they try and focus on anything, because you see people on Facebook and in YouTube videos. Focus is a critical part of this, because if you're out of focus, it doesn't look really good. How do you handle focus on the sun, and then how do you handle focus on the moon?
Well, on this particular one, I just put I put my focus point at the edge, because it's there's not much detail on the sun to actually phone focus, and so I just sort of rely on technology to get me there, and I'll do a test shot, make sure that everything's in focus. If there is no sunspots, it's going to be really hard to tell if you're right on it. But with my setup, I went to autofocus, and then I turned it all off, autofocus off, and because you don't want the machine thing to try to refocus for you. But I'm focusing right at the edge of the sun.
Okay.
Contrast, and also with a lot of mirrorless cameras, they have a thing called focus peaking, and so I have a program that when I'm in focus, there's a red ring around the moon when it's our sun when it's in focus.
Okay. All right.
Using technology, but with the moon you can use autofocus, but then depending on what your autofocus settings, if you're not tracking it and you leave it on some type of continuous focusing mode, and suddenly the moon and the sun moves out of the way, and it'll go out of focus.
So
with mirrorless, at least on the Panasonic line, I can go completely manual focus, but program a button in the back to do autofocus, and so the camera thinks it's manual focus, but I can override it. But when I'm not pushing that button, it's set. So unless I bump my camera lens, it's once it's set. But I can tweak it real quickly because I have a back button focus that still works even though I'm technically in manual focus on my camera.
So back in the old days when I was trying to take astrophotos using the zoom lens, and I'd learned, shoot up a roll of film, and I'd go. Luckily, had a black and white darkroom in my house, and would go in the bathroom and process the film and look at the negatives. And I discovered that the zoom would slip. Do you tape your zoom down and your focus down once you achieve it, or is your lens tight enough that you don't have to do that?
Well, that particular lens I'm using, I have 3 modes where it is extremely tight and doesn't move at all. I have one where it's very stiff and one very loose. If a person doing video, they want to zoom in and out, they can make it very loose. So I haven't had a problem with the zooming on the magnification side, but it may be an issue with the autofocus.
Right.
And so I've I've had it where well, the one I did on a couple of days later, which was on the front the very first one, at the lower, which had the transit in the lower part of the sun. I had forgot to turn the autofocus off, and I had to quickly refocus it, and it happened right before the transit. So I just barely made it, and so things happen. I forgot to turn the switch off. But
How many of these have you done, Carl?
probably I've this was my I've done several lunar ones, and this is about my I've done 2 successful solar, and first time doing solar when I had that conjunction with the spacecraft on the stuff is the one I messed up. So 3 attempts and 2 successes as far as solar and lunar. I've done several.
So do you feel good about the process you've established, or what are you going to tweak? What do you think is good, and what do you think needs to change?
Well, I think I got the process down pretty well. I think I just need to, as far as doing some of the editing at the end, as far as, remember how to do all the masking and get maybe a sharper image. Even with the lunar one, I think the individual images look sharper to the combined. So I just need to sit down and learn some fancy aspects of Photoshop more.
And looking at this picture, you don't have a lot of limb brightening on either the sun or the moon images. Did you do any burning and dodging to try and eliminate that, or was that just you managed to get a pretty good exposure where the limb looks brighter than the central part of the sun or moon?
The only post-processing is things like adjusting the overall exposures, or pulling out more contrast, clarity, and all those sliders you see in Lightroom. I haven't done any non-global edits on it.
Okay.
They're all sort of go global for the whole picture.
So what are you going to change? Anything?
Well, it'd be nice to get even closer, which would mean going from taking the time to set up one of my telescopes as opposed to doing it on the camera.
How cropped are these images?
They're about 50% crop.
Okay, so fairly significant. So if you can
Well,
get
that's why
more,
I shot at 6K. So
Sir?
because I basically cropped it to 4K image.
Yeah, so a longer focal length is going to give you more resolution on the image and make things just look tighter and crisper. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
There was a if you want to look it up, there was a Tuesday's astronomy picture of the day. Somebody did it in hydrogen alpha, a detailed, only a partial part of the sun, real close up, and it got very tight, sharp International Space Station. So if you look up the APOD for Tuesday, there's a great image there.
trying to look
solar
that up.
flares, everything else.
Astronomy photo of the day
Yeah.
From Tuesday, the 4th? Correct?
I think
it was the 4th. 4th or 5th, something like that. Paul should be able to find that and get that available to us. So what else do you do in astronomy? Obviously, you're doing transits. Are you doing anything else?
Well, mostly what I do as far as astrophotography is landscape, nightscape type stuff. Again, I'm not sophisticated to do a lot of the the deep sky astro things that a lot of my friends in the Riverside Astronomical Society do. So I kind of specialize more on landscape work. So.
Yeah, hang on a second. Let me talk to Paul. It's the 4th or 5th. We're looking for the one that looks like a transit of the sun in hydrogen alpha, so you'll be able to see loops and things like that. It should be from the 4th or 5th, maybe the 6th.
The 6th is Arendelle.
Just open it up.
Seven sisters. Fourth is Florida.
It's April 11th.
April 11th, Paul. April the 11th. Carl just looked it up. There we go. There we go. It'll take him a second to get up. Give him a second. He'll get it up. That's a pretty impressive picture. And it looks like they, yeah, we'll let it come up.
So that's, yeah, well, I guess I need to invest in a hydrogen alpha attachment to go to my ED80. Try to do some of that. So that's a lot more interesting than looking at a white moon and white sun.
And Saturday, of course, doing solar outreach, no sunspots to look at. Luckily, one of our compatriots was there with a nice hydrogen alpha scope, and we were able to see, the solar flares moving and the loops and stuff, and it was a nice, pleasing image that saved the day. Otherwise, we would have been enjoying the beauty of a blank sun all day long, and we got to see at least hydrogen alpha, and that transit in hydrogen alpha looked pretty spectacular. Just makes you want to spend more money, doesn't it, Carl?
Oh yeah, I think about I can get either through Lunt or Daystar a filter to go on my ED80 and start playing with it, I guess.
It's just money. Grows on trees in Southern California like oranges, right?
Yep.
All right. Paul, what time is it? 4:55. Okay. So, Scott, are you out there in the background and can give us a read back on the comments? Paul, is Scott in the background?
Yeah.
Yeah, can you loop him in? There he is. Okay. So, Scott, are you there? Scott, are you there?
No.
Is he frozen? Scott's frozen. He's a wax figure. Oh, well, so I can't see what's a lot of the quotes. I can't scroll the monitor. Had a lot of comments there of people asking, saying the sound was bad. Oh, Scott's back. Okay.
Yeah.
There he is. I can hear him.
Anyways, yeah.
It's just a matter of figuring it out.
Yeah, we're going to get this ironed out. We're making progress.
Okay.
All right. So, Scott, what kind of, what were the feedback? I know.
Comments?
Yeah, what questions? I know, anybody else have any weighed in on observations?
People, we apologize when we had so many technical issues, but we did get some of the stuff, and most of it, I think maybe all of it, ironed out during the course of the show. Let me see if there's any specific questions. Most of our regular audience was watching here. Tarek says, I can imagine the sun now and the moon easily, but I wish to image that in the International Space Station. I have a question for you, Carl. When you decide from the get-go, oh, wow, I think that there's going to be a pass in front of the sun, how long does it take you from the time that you start arranging, your schedules and all the things? Is it days? Do you know weeks ahead of time? I mean, what's the?
Well, again, you can on the transit website, you can give a span of time, but you got to realize that the farther out, the less accurate the actual transit might be, on the day of the transit. So, I basically just rely on things that are within 80 kilometers. I haven't gone to something that's 200 kilometers away. I just figure that if it's not close, it'll eventually happen a few months down the road, because it's something that occurs on a regular basis. It's not frequent, but not that infrequent. And so if I might every couple of weeks check the site, see if there's anything interesting. I have actually 2 more coming up in the next couple of weeks, but one it's going to be out in Joshua Tree, and another one,
Okay.
it's 2 weeks out, and it says it's going to be in my backyard, but I doubt that. But
Well, that'd be cool.
And Carl, you live in Los Angeles.
It'd be nice if it goes well in my backyard, but I might try set up a German equatorial, but I have to
And where do you live?
But I live in Riverside, California.
Riverside. Okay. Yeah. So I'm real familiar with the area. Lived there in Southern California for a long time. Observed a lot from Joshua Tree. So Joshua Tree is a bit of a drive, for sure, but not from Riverside. It's pretty good. So you decide, okay, yeah, I'm going to go. You get your gear ready, and so you can, if you make a decision to do it, you can within a day, I guess, head out there and set up and capture it. Is that right?
I'm just doing stuff today, an hour or two drive within an hour or two drive of my house.
Okay, well, that's very cool.
And you're Carl, you're retired, so you have a pretty flexible schedule, I guess, correct?
Yeah, it gets me out of the house.
There you go. So
Where all the work is.
That's why I'm getting a lot of bird photography.
So you don't just go to a transit. If you go to the transit, if you can find a city park or somewhere where you think there's going to be birds, you go and shoot birds and butterflies too, correct?
Yeah, well, if I have time, or
Right.
I go after I get, and the one I did on the 4th, I still had an hour to kill, so I found a butterfly floating among wildflowers, and I chased it, and still had half an hour to kill. We set up and do that. And the one on the very first one, the one I was up in Wrightwood, but there's not enough places you can park, and so I thought I was near the center line, but you can see it, from the one that I started out the presentation with, it was near the edge of the sun, so I was farther from the center line than I thought, from ground truth. But I only found one spot looking at Google Earth where there was a wide enough spot, where there wasn't a sign saying, no, you can't park here. And so it was the most convenient spot, as far as traffic, but it was not the best spot for the, getting right on the center of the transit.
Cool. Well, any comments there, Scott? Questions?
Well, some people said that I froze, so I want to see if I'm still frozen.
You're not now.
What's that?
I don't think you're frozen. You were.
Okay. I was. Okay. Don't know why. Sorry about that, guys. No, I think that I think people want to try it, they'll certainly watch this program again, and we should probably do this one more time in the future just to kind of cover it a little bit better without all of our starts and stops and trying to figure out what we're doing on the side. Okay.
The main thing is that the main thing to remind people if they're doing solar is that, again, protect your eyes.
Yes,
besides
absolutely.
having solar filter on your scope, if you have any other finder scopes on there, make sure they're either covered or have a filter on it, because you want to be protective of both you and your equipment.
Okay. Here's a great question. Can you list the websites that Carl uses? I missed the beginning. So,
Yeah. Hey. Okay, Paul. Go to the slide. The slide. I said slide, which is a combination of slide and site. Go to the slide that shows the program. The first slide that shows programs that he uses, please, and put that up. And so then Scott can then capture them, or people have time to look. Next slide. There you go. I got to remember I'm watching on the monitor, delayed. There we go.
The one I use.
Oh,
one
yeah,
I use
Kevin's
again is the
above.
first one.
Transit Finder is the big one. Transit-finder.com.
Now, ISS Finder.
All three of those are just smartphone versions of smartphone trackers for the International Space Station that gives you near real-time location and future predictions of passes. And heavens-above.com. And Scott, you're putting those in the chat, correct?
I can.
Okay.
So you can just copy and paste. Outline, and then ISS Finder. Let me see if I can find that.
I think that's a phone app. It's not going to be a website.
Well, even so.
Yeah, I find those phone apps not too applicable to useful. But then again, I
Here it
use
is
my
on
phone.
the Google Store, so I will copy that for them so they can see that.
I know I have an iPhone and there's a similar couple of apps. If you just put in ISS or International Space Station in your search engine, you're going to come up with that as well. Heavens Above, Carl, how accurate do you find it? Pretty accurate?
Well, again, it's giving you a path across the sky. It's not as precise as what you might get from the Finder, but it gives you, and it's only applicable if you're going to have a visible pass. That it might tell you you'd be able to tell 50 seconds before it crosses the moon, it's going to cross by Jupiter, so you can see what direction to look for which way the ISS is going to be going.
Okay.
And but far as
And
timing and all that stuff, you got to use the Finder, the Transit Finder program for accurate. I just do video and I set it, from the time, and so I guess I don't need it, but it's still nice to know if it's going to visual pass or sometimes it'll go. I've had it be visible, but it goes in the shadow before it gets to the moon. So once the ISS appeared, I pushed the button. But it's just another tool. But
Yep, everything's a tool. Scott, I think you froze again. Nope, he's not.
Am I?
He's just really still.
I was
You're
just sitting still.
Yeah, you're sitting still. Okay, Paul, go to the.
And you can also use the Heavens Above if you want to actually have a picture of not of a transit, but it's more applicable for the actual flybys when it's going overhead. If you want to take a picture, do some picture of a streak of the ISS across the landscape.
Right.
That's part more applicable for that. But
So
Paul,
I put down the heavensabove.com link and the Google app for the ISS detector. What was the first one?
Transit-finder.com.
Transit Finder. Okay.
Transit-finder.
yeah, that's the primary program you need to figure out where to go and how long. And
Yeah.
and
Okay.
and the thing is, you can see that if you go to the page where I have several transits on there, you can see that they're all different sizes, and some of them will be little tiny dots going across the moon or sun. But when you're getting the ISS around 50 to 60 seconds, you're getting that's kind of you're getting approached toward the maximum size you're going to see. And usually the timing is when the moon or sun is near zenith is kind of when the location of the ISS versus the target you're going to see the largest ISS usually around zenith. And so like high noon for the sun, plus or minus an hour, will probably give you the best transits. The moon, when it's up high, you'll get a larger transit as opposed to the moon near the horizon if you have one that goes across that time.
Paul, go to the next slide, please. The one that shows There's one that shows the stacking programs. That'll be the next one we can link to. Keep going. Yeah, that's the one. No, go back. I'm trying, there, right there, I think is it, Paul. Setting up the shot. No, it's the one that talks about the programs he uses, stacker programs.
Yeah, it's the next slide after that. There's a time lapse software. There's PIP, and then of course Star Stack.
Yep, processing the image is the top of the slide. There we go.
So there's links for PIP. There's links for time lapse creator, and then Star Stack and Star Stack both have websites. So.
Yeah, so Scott, there's some more you can post.
So hold on for a second.
So image extraction is a program that you use to find the segment of the video you want and cut it out and then take each individual frame and make a picture out of it, right?
Yes, image extraction is the process of finding either manually on your camera or using software. I mean, the software it doesn't find your images. With PIP, you're going to get 2,000 TIFFs, and you're going to still have to weed through all those to find your 15 or 20 images.
Okay, so it's not like you can run it and go, okay, start here, stop here, extract all those in between the markers and go on down the road. You just extract.
I can do that. I think I might be able to do that in camera, but I haven't used PIP that much to. I think I have to find the individual ones.
Okay.
I pretty much always just extract them in my camera, or if the few times I couldn't find it, I do it on my laptop and scroll. And with the larger screen, it's easier to see sometimes.
Hey, Scott,
I do not find the link for image extraction. I'm going to time-lapse software.
PIP. Do PIP. PIPP.
Software. Planetary imaging preprocessor.
That's it.
Is that it?
That's.
I'm going to give them the home page, and then they can see from there.
Yeah.
Okay, there's PIP. And time-lapse creator, is that the name of it, or?
Yes, that's the name of the actual software, and it's downloadable from the Microsoft store.
And again,
time-lapse
free Windows program. There's probably something similar for the Apple aficionados among us.
This is it. This is it right here. Hold on. And yeah, you're right. It's on the store. So this is the store link. And okay, so you guys out there know Photoshop, Star Stack.
Yep.
These are stacking software, popular ones that are out there.
Yep.
Harold Locke says, open the video in Photoshop and save his individual PSDs or TIFFs.
Paul Newton is nodding his head rapidly, agreeing with that. The thing is, to have Photoshop, you have to pay for the license, and a lot of people like to use the free stuff, and that just, that's a choice we all make on what we're going to do,
In Black, DaVinci Resolve.
In what?
DaVinci Resolve.
DaVinci Resolve is a free. You can do the same thing in a program called DaVinci, like Leonardo da Vinci. Resolve. DaVinci Resolve. Well, watching on the monitor, I can see the closed caption popping up, and it actually does a pretty darn good job on a lot of these words.
Yeah, there's a free program that I used for a long time when I didn't have Photoshop called GIMP,
GIMP
and
is another one.
GIMP has a lot of the same tools Photoshop has. So let me see if I can
The,
get download.
the interface is not as elegant and on GIMP and robust, but yet it's
But if you know Photoshop, you can figure it out pretty fast.
right. I'll say, okay, Carl.
All right,
So
guys.
Carl, what's on the agenda? We're getting the knock it off sign. This is Wednesday. Paul has to get ready for another broadcast on the hunt here coming up. So we're going to have to. Carl, thank you so much for giving us your time and your knowledge. It serves as an inspiration for people to go out and do this stuff. I suspect that we're going to have a couple of people who have been watching. They're going to go out and try this. And I want to bring them on the show to talk about their experiences and what they learned because, I keep saying, look, people who want to do astrophotography, take what gear you have and go figure out a way to do it. Don't think you got to spend tens of thousands of dollars to go do this. You're doing this with a digital camera, a lens you have, and the expense might be to have to buy a film, a solar safe film to go in front of it. But that's pretty easy and affordable to do, whether you go with Beta Film or the Explore Scientific Film or other films that are out there. So, Carl, thank you very much again for doing that.
No problem. Great.
So, Scott, any parting thoughts you have?
It makes me want to go out and try it. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah, seeing shots like that are really cool. And, you can always up the ante by trying to get longer focal length, higher resolution, all the rest of it. It just makes that whole process more challenging. Earlier in the program, I said it's like fly fishing for flying fish, so, and trying to capture some of this kind of stuff. But, with the tools that you have today, you know where to be, and if you're using video, you can just sit there and be rolling video the entire time until you think that it's reasonable to stop and then go and find your images. So being in the right spot, being focused is, and just showing up is the biggest part of almost everything, just showing up, just showing up for a total eclipse, just showing up for, I have a little story about going out in the driving rain in North San Diego County during the peak of Halley's Comet. And I had a Dobsonian telescope strapped to my roof. It was getting soaking wet, okay? And I drove out and I go, I might not get anything, but then I might get something. And indeed, I got a break in the clouds right around Halley's Comet. I got to see it for about 5 minutes during its peak. And then the other clouds came in and it still continued to rain. And, but I got it. Telescope cleaned up.
So Scott, just sitting here looking on transit-finder.com, we missed a Tiangong transit, a very large transit earlier today, a couple hours ago. So there was one here that would have been good to photograph. And there's some coming up, not going to be close in the next week or so. But yeah, transitfinder.com is going to be one that I start looking at a whole bunch. Thank you, Carl, for that information. You created more work for me. I love it. Thank you, sir. So anyway, we got to get off. Oh, we did, and I want to get you back on one of our On the Wing shows as well to talk about how you go about taking some of those beautiful photos, and we'll be talking about that in coming days. Anyway, so from the Explorer Scientific Studio in beautiful Springdale, Arkansas, I want to thank Carl once again for giving us his time and his beautiful pictures and knowledge and sharing a vast array of bird photos. Scott, thanks for joining us. I think we've got most of the bugs worked out. Sooner or later, You just like doing astrophotography, sooner or later you just have to take the program and go live with it and figure out what happens. So I think we got the bugs worked out. It's Paul's third day using it, in a very unique way. Hopefully we got it figured out and we'll improve from here. You look back on what we started doing almost 2 years ago, Scott, and this has truly been an amazing journey that we've accomplished in 2 years of daily broadcast. So anyway, I'm going to sign off. Thanks, everybody, for watching.
Take care.